Hi, I'm David Miller from the University of Florida, where I'm a professor in research methods and evaluation and also the school director for human development and organizational studies and education. And today I'm one of the co-hosts for Web Bites, and our topic today is institutional effectiveness and accreditation in the age of COVID.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy Cumming. Nice to see you. I'm the Associate Provost for Institutional Effectiveness and Assistant Vice President at Brooklyn College of the City University of New York. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Ted Mitchell, who serves as the President for the American Council on Education and also was the former Undersecretary for the Department of Education. Welcome, Ted. We're so happy to have you today.
Thanks. Tammy, David, great to be with you.
All right, today I thought we'd start out with our first question is about the American Council on Education, of course, has a long history of providing guidance and utilizing data to make informed policy and program decisions. So how do you see institutions leveraging data to improve their institutional effectiveness in this new online environment that we're in?
You know, it's been very interesting, and both of you have been on the front lines of this in your respective institutions. But as we were talking to members and especially member presidents and provosts around the country, we're finding that the need to move to remote learning and the need to be able to try to find ways to keep track of students has facilitated a transition to big data for a lot of institutions. And so what used to be a set of transactions that were enabled by proximity are now being enabled by the transfer of data. And I don't think that that's gonna stop once COVID stops. I think that we're learning new ways of nudging our students to remind them of deadlines and so on. I think that we're learning new ways of staying in touch with our students. I think that office hours have become a completely different kettle of fish. Slightly off the topic of data, but I do think that we are now gathering more data about our students. We're using it in a more timely way, and we're becoming more effective at meeting our students where they are, which is both now a literal fact, and it's something we've been talking about in the field for a long time, with the age of students increasing, their mobility increasing, the increasing penetration of online programs. All of that suggests that we're in a big data world, whether we like it or not.
You know, I agree completely. I know one of the challenges for an institutional effectiveness office is there is such an abundance of data that's available. Like you said, we're in the world of big data. So it's translating all of this data into meaningful and usable information that's been the challenge. And with universities also worrying about budget issues that have come about because of, in some cases, lower enrollments, it's been a challenge in figuring out how to get all of this done. Do you have any guidance, or have you heard what people are doing in order to just be most efficient, or is reviewing that data helping them be most efficient?
Yeah, you know, it's a really good question, and both of you are in institutions that have made significant investments in data, not just in response to COVID, but prior to COVID, and that's a good thing. I feel that too many institutions are struggling earlier in that learning curve at the point where they're having to make the investments and not getting the kinds of returns yet that the technology and the data tools promise. So I think we have to admit that there's a curve here in which the expenditures outpace the academic returns for a little while, but then they begin to kick back in terms of things that actually do affect the bottom line: student retention, student progress to graduation, students' ability to access financial aid outside of the institution as well as inside the institution. That's where some of the payoff happens. But they're like most startups, this will require an investment pause. I do hope that one of the things that we will continue to see is institutions sharing their knowledge. And that can go all the way from sharing their data platforms to sharing their data scientists who are busy putting together templates by which institutions can look at student engagement, student success, develop predictive student pathways, That doesn't need to be done 1,700 times across the country. That needs to be done 10 to 12 times across the country. And then it needs to be a part of a collective distribution mechanism that we hope that ACE and AAC and you can be a part of making that happen.
Thank you. You know, I wanted to touch on something that you said. I was going to ask you what you thought the implications are, pivoting just a little, for accreditation with the legislation that's changed as of July 1st. There's now no more regional accreditation, it's national accreditation. But what we've seen when we interviewed all of the presidents of the regional accreditation, formerly regional accreditation organizations, is that universities did come together and started research sharing like you're talking about. Did you want to elaborate a little bit on what you see going forward with the new legislation of national accreditation?
Sure. Let's take a step back. I think the way we see the new regulations is that regional accreditors will continue to exist. They will start at the starting line with their family of institutions. But what's new is that they will be able to accredit institutions outside of their region, and institutions will be able to approach accreditors who aren't their current regional accreditor. So I think that it's going to take a while for it to shake itself out. I don't think that there is going to be an abrupt shift in the portfolio of regional accreditors. All of us have been through accreditation. If you've served on an accrediting commission, you know that it's meaningful to switch accreditors. And so I don't think that institutions will take that on lightly. And frankly, I don't think that accreditors will take on new customers if they are sort of very different in mission, very different in focus, and quite frankly, if they're in a far off region of the country. I was a WASC commissioner for
Okay.
6 years, and you know, one of the WASC is the most geographically distributed of the accrediting agencies because we had Guam, the Northern Marianas, and Hawaii in our catchment area. That gets to be a little bit of a schlep if we are still going to be working in the area of in-person teams doing this work. But I also want to now take it and put it back into the former conversation, because I think one of the things that's happening is that accreditors will have access to a wide variety of data tomorrow that they didn't have access to yesterday. And so as all of the accreditors, whether they are the formerly known regional accreditors, the formerly known national accreditors, or even the specialized accreditors, they will have access to student success metrics that they've never had before. And I think that that's going to be important, and it's going to be able to sharpen the focus of accrediting bodies on really the bottom line, which is, are these institutions making it possible for learners who are in their organization to succeed in what they set out to do. I think that's a good thing, but data is also very tempting because one loses nuance the closer one gets to just looking at the numbers. So my personal hope, again, as a former accreditor, is that we never lose that textured view of an institution that comes from professionals taking a look at what their peers are doing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It seems to me like some of your earlier comments also about how some are ahead of the curve on this is also going to be an important part as we think about the changes in accreditation, because I would imagine institutions will also be looking at who they're working with now, and what kind of information and what kind of models they can find for this data collection and data use out there. And so I would think that there's a greater impact from the participating members than there was before in terms of what that accrediting agency will look like in the future.
Yeah, I think that's really right, David. And I think that it is clear that already institutions have passed accreditors in their technical and data science capacities. And that will be a very interesting dynamic to watch over time. I think Tammy, you asked earlier about the cost implications. You know, I think accreditors are going to have to get a lot smarter really quickly about the work that they're doing with their institutions, because the institutions are now two and three generations ahead in terms of their ability to collect, analyze, and draw conclusions from the data that they have.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much, Ted, for joining us and sharing your expertise. It's been a great conversation, and until next time.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
Tammy.
you.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.